September the 5th, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. All council members are present, the city secretary is here, the city treasurer is here, and Jay will be joining us in just a few minutes. If you rise for the invocation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there anyone here who would like to lead us in prayer tonight? In that case, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, and visitors to be heard. Has anybody signed up? Three visitors. Okay, as long, I might ask you, if you're speaking, want to speak at the public hearing, this is not the appropriate time to do that. So if this is not pertaining to public hearing, okay. Sherry Barrett?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
First, I go up here or just?
You may come up here, address the council, state your name and your address for the record, please.
My name is Cherry Barrett, I live at 461 Bandera Boulevard. And I wanted to talk about the truck traffic that comes down that street. It's pretty heavy. It's a narrow road. In some spots, there's only one car can go by. So I looked up the ordinance on that, and there is one. 13th Street, no trucks can go through there, and that would pertain to Bandera Boulevard also. So, and there's also a weight limit on the bridge that crosses from the Silver Sage to Bandera Boulevard. 30 miles per hour on that little bitty road is too fast. I drove it today at 20, and I thought that was too fast. You have your schools in progress now, so you have buses, you have 18-wheelers, you have dump trucks, civic trucks, all that coming down that road. One lady was on a bicycle, she got run off the road. The lady stopped, they ran her off the road, and as soon as she got up, they left. This is a problem. We do have ordinances, I wrote them down.
Oh, council's not allowed to address you in a general manner at this point, but I do want to tell you that we are addressing that very issue tonight on this agenda, so it will be, we'll be looking at it tonight.
And is the taxes and the water increase on,
Ma'am,
is the taxes and water increase on the agenda today?
that is during the budget workshop and the public hearing portion, and that will be the time to address this about
Okay,
that.
okay.
Thank you. Okay, Rilla Stevens?
I go to the senior center just about every day. Not that I'm a senior, I just do it for fun. But I cannot believe the 18-wheelers that are going down coming down from the school toward the bridge and taking, I don't know the name of the road, the first street to the right that comes out on 173. Yeah, Bandera Boulevard. It's a hazard for the seniors trying to cross the street with their walkers, their wheelchairs. You have a school, which is fun now, it's going on. You have a neighborhood. You're soon to have small houses for the seniors there, a senior center. And you also have the museum. You know, it's a neighborhood. It should not have to contend with 18-wheelers at least. And I do agree the speed limit is way too high for the people that are coming. When you pull out from the senior center, and if you don't believe me, try it. You pull out, somebody's liable to get killed because looking toward the bridge, it's got a little crook in it at the very end, and you can't see the car coming across the bridge. It's just a hazard. And so we're asking that you take a look at this and consider putting up signs, and I saw the ones on 13th, I never paid attention before, but I think they should be red and white for the trucks and a big thing through it instead of yellow, because it catches attention better. I don't know what the answers are, other than we're gonna have to do something, because if you go down Bandera Boulevard and you go to that rock entrance or exit there, I don't know how the trucks are doing it. They're telling me that they go clear out onto 173 to try to make a turn, you know. So that's what we're here for tonight. And there's supposed to be others, but they're gonna be too late. They didn't know the time.
Thank you, Rilla.
Thank you.
Art? Art Crawford?
Hi, Art Crawford, same subject, and I appreciate the fact that it's on your agenda tonight. So, I do just want to say, thank you for having it on your agenda, and the truck traffic has gotten ridiculous. And now, last several weeks, I noticed all the tour buses that used to come down Main Street are now coming down Mud Creek Boulevard. So, I think it's because GPS is routing them that way. I know there's nothing we can do about that. But while you're addressing this issue, I would appreciate if you'd also talk to the Public Works and see if some speed bumps are possible around the bridge and close to those stop signs. Willie probably knows if he wanted to, he could sit there and write 20, 30 tickets a day for running a stop sign by the bridge, because it's constant all day long. I mean, they just curve on around it. And I really don't want this to be one of those things where a senior citizen gets killed walking, or more likely pulling out of the parking lot because they are old, they are slow, and here comes somebody at 45 miles an hour, and they're going to just make that turn and run the stop sign anyway. So I don't know what you have to do to put speed bumps up. I don't know who's in charge of it, but while you're looking at the truck issue, if you would please consider a couple of speed bumps around the school and around the senior center. And anything we can do to help. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your consideration.
Okay, moving on to item 4, the consent agenda. Approve the minutes from August 15, 2019 regular meeting. Rebecca?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second, Bryce, second. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay, here we go with item 5, recognition. Lily, could you come up here for a minute, please? Deputy Smith, I mean. Deputy Smith, would you step to the front of the room? Pretty special day. In recognition of 5 years of service to Deputy Willie Smith. Thank you for being dedicated to the City of Bandera Marshal's Office and for handling each emergency with uncompromised competence and integrity, for being the steady voice of the storm, for using courage and compassion, and for providing such a meaningful service to the city of citizens of Bandera. Now, enough of that. I don't know who writes this stuff. So,
I do.
what I have to say to you, come on. Poke you with my stick. Is that I've seen what a difference you've made in the city of Bandera since you've been with us, and I've got to give you every kudo there is in the world for the tremendous effort that you have put into making National Night Out, which is now Nightmare on Maple Street, our Halloween celebration, such a safe family event for our families, our citizens, our neighbors, and our friends to all enjoy what was National Night Out. In recognition of your 5 years of faithful service, oh, that's a sleeve. We're getting there, folks. You like it so far?
Yes.
It was wrapped up so there were no fingerprints.
Okay. Deputy Willie Smith, thank you for 5 years of protecting and serving the city of Bandera.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Okay, item 6 is public hearing. The city council will hold a public hearing regarding the proposed tax rate. And I certainly don't even have any of my tax rate. Can you get me my tax rate breakdown that's on the top of the desk, please? I'm sorry for. Well, basically what it boils down to is what we discussed at our last workshop, was adding a 6.88, almost 7% interest and sinking tax onto this year's tax roll. In August the 2nd, we signed, of 18, we signed an ordinance requiring us to do that in conjunction with the securing of the Sticker Order Development Board loan. Now, you know, I'll quote you, I'll read the last of it. Section 5, interest and sinking, a special interest and sinking fund has been created and has established and maintained by the issuer of the in a bank. The said rate and amount of ad valorem tax is hereby levied and is hereby ordered to be levied against all taxable property in the issuer for each year while any of the certificates are outstanding and unpaid, and said tax shall be assessed and collected each year and deposited to the credit of aforesaid interest sinking fund. So what this breaks down to, with the Texas Water Development Board loan, we've got a $3 million, almost a $4 million obligation with interest. Now this is utility stuff. And there's, the interest this year is $64,257. And Brenda Shearhart figured it up for us, gave us some numbers to put in the notice. But folks, we've got to go up. We've also got to raise our utility fees, and it's kind of an effort to make it more even to everybody in town, raising the tax and the utility fees, because not everyone here owns property. And not everyone here, well, yeah, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we've got some renters that live here, we've got some people that are absentee owners, they need to help pay for this utility system. Our tax base and our fees are the way that we generate our income. So that's the basis of the 6.88% increase. Public, if you raise your hand if you have questions or comments. Council, questions or comments? Okay, are each of you who was, oh, there's one, Art.
I'm sorry, can you clarify, in your earlier statement, you said 6.88%, and just now you said 6.88 cents.
It's 6.88 cents.
Thank you.
Almost 7 cents.
Okay.
I might have said 7%, but it's almost 7 cents.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Per $100. Per $100.
Yeah, that's right. In that case, will everyone who is here please sign the sign-up sheet if you've already been here, and we will move on. Okay, item 7, discussion and possible action on the following items. A is adopting ordinance 363, amending Article 103, City Council Ethics. That is clarifying that we will go by the local government code instead of the elections code, because we were referenced both, kind of confusing. And the second part is adding the compensation and expenses payroll deduction, which is required. And if you've read this, it doesn't specify an amount. We can get into that when we get into budget if you choose to change it. So this is basically just saying that this is what we're making ourselves eligible to do.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion to amend Article 1.03, the City Council Ethics. Ordinance.
To amend it?
363.
To amend it or adopt it?
We restate your motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Ordinance 363, amending Article 1.03, City Council Ethics.
Second. Do I get a second? Thank you. Thank you, Bryce. Discussion, council? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to do this clarification on the ethics ordinance because we had two different, the Secretary of State was saying that a candidate for city council needed to be a resident for 6 months. And then the Texas Local Government Code said that you needed to be a candidate for city council, you needed to be a resident the day of election, of filing your election application. And that is, to me, two different things. And after speaking with the city attorney and the city secretary, they both recommended that we go by the Texas Local Government Code. So I just wanted it to be clear in our ethics code that we would be going by the Texas Local Government Code and not the secretary, the election code.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further discussion? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Item B, the first reading of resolution to authorize a $37,500 expenditure by the Bandera Economic Development Corporation to Tractor Supply Company located at 220 Highway 173 South for the purpose of job creation and retention pursuant to Texas Local Government Code Section 505.155. Tony, you got a resolution?
This is the first reading for a resolution by the City Council of Bandera supporting the Bandera Economic Development Corporation to fund job training. The original meeting was on 4/10. Public hearing was on June 12th, I believe. My apologies. So the resolution, whereas the Economic Development Corporation is a functioning body appointed by the City Council to lead the economic development for the City of Bandera, and whereas the Economic Development Corporation is a Type B EDC within a city with a population of less than 20,000, and whereas Type B corporations have the statutory authority to spend Type B funds for job training and job retention of a Type B project, 505.155 and 505.156, and whereas the Economic Development Corporation has approved a $37,500 expenditure to Tractor Supply located at 220 Highway 173 South, Bandera, Texas, to be paid at a rate of $12,500 per year for 3 years. And whereas the Economic Development Corporation has followed all policies, procedures, and state laws regarding this funding. And whereas the Economic Development Corporation is confident that such expenditure will be to the benefit of the City of Bandera. Now therefore, be it resolved that the City of Bandera does hereby support the Economic Development Corporation and the decision to fund the job training and job retention project in the amount of $37,500.
Thank you, Tony.
Susanna, if you would entertain a motion,
Yes, Tom.
I would like to move to deny in its entirety the request made in the first reading of the resolution to fund Tractor Supply 220 Highway 173 South in the amount of $37,500 for the purpose of job creation and retention.
Right. Thank you. Discussion? Yes, Tom.
In my other capacity as a board director of the Economic Development Corporation, this was essentially my idea, my proposal. And I think the logic behind it was sound, that we need to expand our tax base, we need to build working relationships with our businesses, and the money that goes out would be recycled back to us in the form of additional sales tax revenue. However, we did have a public hearing in June. The community spoke loudly and clearly and in great numbers that this is not the way they want their money spent, and it's our obligation to spend their money responsibly. And so because of that, I would advocate then we deny the resolution.
Thank you, Tom. Any other discussion about this? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you. The resolution will be. Okay, item C, adopting ordinance 364, amending Article 12.06, trucks to prohibit certain traffic on Old San Antonio Highway, Buck Creek Road, and Bandera Boulevard, and authorizing the installation of signage. Have y'all had a chance to read this? Yes, Lynn?
I'd like to make a motion adopting ordinance 364, amending Article 12.06, trucks to prohibit certain traffic on Old San Antonio Highway, Buck Creek Road, and Bandera Boulevard, and authorizing the installation of signage.
Thank you. I think we actually have two items here. We have the ordinance, and then we have the authorization of the signage, because the ordinance does not state which streets it should be on.
Was there a second? We can't discuss yet.
A second.
Thank you. And that was what I was gonna also say, is that the ordinance 364 is crossing out where it's being specific restrictions on 13th Street.
Dan's here to answer that.
And so what I was, after reading the ordinance, it looks like what you're saying is that no big trucks are allowed on any of the streets in the city of Bandera unless they're delivering something of that nature. And that's why you're excluding the restrictions, is that it?
Hey, Council.
Hi.
So what we did was I looked at your ordinance, and it's pretty similar to a lot of ordinances of that era. And it's a little, it could be more efficient. And so the proper way to deal with truck traffic is by weight. And I think I sent, I don't know if y'all have it in your packet, I sent a diagram. It's basically class 7 and 8 vehicles was what you're dealing with. So over 26,000 pound gross weight. And you have a state highway running through here that's not going to be impacted by this regulation. But it's more efficient if you ban those trucks on all streets, right? That way you don't have to individually authorize signage on any particular street by name. It's prohibited on all your streets other than state highways and other than the noted exceptions that you were going through, which includes delivering goods and services, fire trucks, emergency vehicles, implements of husbandry that are moved on the road incidentally, road repairs, garbage service vehicles, or when repairs to the state highway necessarily diverts that truck traffic onto your local streets. Your local streets, and Public Works Director might be here, but typically they're just not built to the same standards down through the base as the state highway system. And they're not designed to consistently handle loads of that magnitude, and particularly the turning motion of those trucks. And so I wish it had been worded slightly different on your agenda, but the gist of this is it's a little bit more broad than just those specific streets. The ordinance that's before you would yes, prohibit it on all local streets, and with the noted exceptions.
So
Just
you
a second, Lynn.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Cherry, can I ask you a question, please?
Yes.
Do you know the weight limit on that bridge on, Bandera Boulevard?
Was it written on the paper?
Yes, sir.
There used to be a sign there that said 14,000 pounds.
14,000, that's
Knocked
what I
down
was
2 or
afraid of.
3 years ago.
Right. That's an issue, you know, so if we can keep them off of there completely. Go ahead, Lynn, you have a comment?
I was just gonna ask Dan, so you feel like we should not make specific restrictions for named streets?
No, I think you should restrict them on all your local streets. You have that authority under
But
the
in this
transportation
ordinance,
code.
it does, in the ordinance, it lists 13th Street, that's a specific restriction, and we're crossing that out.
I know. Because it's all streets now. You don't have to specifically list any individual streets.
Okay.
It's any local streets. And
Say something real quick.
Lynn, I think,
Ms. Chair, did you have Ms. Chair? If I just say one thing, how will you keep that traffic off Buck Creek, Bandera Boulevard if there's not a sign?
right, this is a two-part course. Every street doesn't have, even 13th, we can put signs up on 13th. It doesn't mean there's no.
Well, there's already signs on 13th.
Okay, then, there you go.
Got it.
So now that still stands. This is just a more broad ordinance. Now, the second part, of course, it's not quite worded correctly, is to authorize
No, it's actually, part two of the ordinance that's in front of you specifically says that the public works director, city administrator, or marshal are hereby authorized to procure and have erected appropriate traffic control signs as required by the law of the state of Texas, providing those the restrictions imposed by the ordinance. Won't be in your city code though. Right now, some of the stuff's in your code. It's not necessary for it to be in there if it's in the enacting ordinance. And so, yes, on any streets where your public works director or marshal or city administrator feels that they're seeing trucks coming through there and maybe they would benefit from having a sign, they have the authority that's being granted by this ordinance to have those signs erected.
Well, I think that part of the issue, Clint, is that when this was mentioned, Jay, and I believe you were in the meeting, really, were you not in that meeting when Buck Creek and the streets that we were talking about were mentioned, and the food truck traffic, and at the time the marshal didn't think it was necessary to put up signs?
That was quite a while back. I remember that, but he didn't think it was necessary.
So I think if we have the consensus of council now, okay, yes, Rebecca.
Does this address the tour buses that were mentioned? Yeah. When you talked about the classification of vehicles and you've got the dual wheels or 4 axles, and the weight limit, combined gross weight limit over 26,000, is that going to address the tour buses? And I know they have specific destinations that are on city streets which would be allowed, but there was some discussion about the through traffic concern.
Jill is gonna go print off the chart that Dan sent us earlier, and we'll be able to give that to council, and it does address the big buses. If they're not delivering or stopping or, have a mission on that street, if they're just through traffic, then they would definitely be prohibited.
Okay.
Yeah, they would have to stay on state highway.
Good. Yes, please.
I have a question for Dan. There's also an issue with Jake braking, engine braking, the stuff that most towns prohibit. Would that be, is that included in this?
No, it's not in this. It wasn't in your code now that I saw, but you can certainly do that. You can adopt an ordinance that regulates that, yes. I don't know if y'all currently have that or not.
Just noise abatement?
I thought there was something.
But if it is, it's not being removed by this. This is solely dealing with the travel, the through trucks.
Okay, but that could be just a matter of the public works director adding signs at the
That's
city
correct.
limits, correct?
If you have an ordinance that prohibits that, yes.
Thank you.
Right.
And to your knowledge, the Jake's braking wouldn't fall under any of your noise abatement ordinances?
Well, it typically is a specific ordinance prohibition so that the signs can be erected at the, because otherwise, your typical noise abatement and your nuisance ordinances are done on a complaint basis. So if we're going to prohibit a certain activity by trucks that are through trucks, right? We need to have an ordinance that specifically prohibits that and allows us to erect those signs at the entrance to the city. If you don't already, and I didn't look at that specific question before coming in here, so.
Thank you.
Yes, Rebecca.
Would this not be the appropriate location for that type of prohibition as related to trucks?
Yeah, it very well might be, Rebecca. I just don't know that it's not somewhere else in your ordinance. I just don't have your ordinance here, but, so what we can, so here's what we can do though, right? Before you make your motion, you can include that in your motion. You can request that prohibition be added, and I can do that and send the corrected version back if it's not already addressed in your code somewhere else. Okay, and so that way you don't have to have it come back before you. Does that? I mean, is that you understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Or did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just, a question and a comment. So I just actually Googled, driving me from Pipe Creek, Texas to Camp Birdie, Texas. I wanted to see how Google took me. And Google says, head west on 16, turn a sharp right on Old San Antonio Road, turn left on Buck Creek, turn left on
That's where it's coming from.
So if they're GPSing this and then they get 2 blocks down Old San Antonio Road and there's a sign that says no trucks, what are they gonna do?
You gotta catch them. We'll put them out at the intersection.
I mean, can you put it on the highway, say trucks don't turn here? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, you can have a designated truck route on the state highway.
I mean, that's my thing, is, you know, they're following this.
Correct.
And once you put a sign up, they're already there. And they're not gonna back
They
back
can't turn
out.
around at that point.
Jay, could we talk to TxDOT and see what we could do up there at the intersection, please?
Yes, ma'am. I'll be on it in the morning.
Yes, really.
Then you would want signs in two places, because they also come all the way into the light on 16 and just go around the curve in front of the museum. So, there you go.
Just gonna
You need one on Old San Antonio beginning and also on that
Thank you,
curve where the kids walk.
thank you. Okay, we want to rephrase that.
So what, I can rephrase my motion, but it was that Jake breaking?
Jake breaking.
Air brakes.
Engine.
Yeah, if you've heard it, you'd know it.
So, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 364, amending Article 12.06, trucks prohibited, certain traffic on Old San Antonio Highway, Buck Creek Road, and Bandera Boulevard, and authorizing the installation of signage and prohibiting Jake breaking.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Secretary.
Is our city attorney satisfied with the motion as stated?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's fine.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah, I have the same question, so what we
It
just
wasn't
stated.
exactly what he said.
And the attorney said all the city streets would be covered. I hear that in the motion.
But that's the thing in the ordinance.
The way this is written, guys, it's not written correctly. It should have just said to approve the ordinance, because the ordinance says all city streets. Because there's specific streets that they've been talked about to put the no truck signs on are Old San Antonio Highway, Buck Creek, Bandera Boulevard. Those are the specific ones that we've talked about. We don't need to have that in the ordinance, because the ordinance now authorizes Jay, the marshal, and public works director to put those signs up.
So you just want me to make a motion adopting ordinance 364,
Prohibiting certain truck
prohibiting
traffic.
Jake
And that's it.
breaking?
And Jake breaks, yes.
Okay, so
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion
Come on.
adopting ordinance 364, amending Article 12.06, prohibiting trucks and prohibiting Jake breaking
Thank you.
in the city limits.
Okay. Third time's a charm.
Sorry about
Any
that,
further
guys.
discussion? Okay, I think it's important that we did add those check breaks while we're already addressing the situation right here and right now. All in favor?
Good second.
Bryce, second. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you. All right, thank you, folks. Item 8, request by council to place items on the future agenda. Anything right now that's present?
I know that we're busy with the, with our budget and the tax rate and all of that, but in the future, I would like to address our historical ordinance, our historical properties in the city of Bandera, because ordinance 347 is not in effect, and so we really don't have anything for our historical properties, so I would like to address that.
Okay,
In
they're
the
gonna be
future, near
workshops.
future, please.
Lynn, I'd like to say this for workshops.
That's fine.
After the election.
Sure, as long as we address it, I think it's important.
Yeah, we kicked it around. Okay, thank you. Any other requests by council? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'd like to have an item, we'll have an executive session with the city administrator to address some issues that I've been addressing, and I'm not satisfied with the thing, the way some of the things are going. And we just gave a $10,000 raise, and not even one word of constructive criticism from any member of council. So I think the only way I'm gonna be able to address it, we can have an executive session.
Okay, can I
And
get
just so
you,
we can have these items brought up, iron it out, and so we can do them.
okay, could I get with you later, we could discuss the wording, or I could call you tomorrow, the next day, discuss the wording for the agenda item?
That's fine.
Thanks. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we've got item B, announcements by council. What's coming up, guys? Anything coming up?
No more charging for the park, right? Jay, we said
Correct.
this is last
It
week.
ended last Monday.
Okay, and start getting ready. National Night Out is October 31st, Nightmare on Maple Street. All right, anything else? Okay, let's move on to item 9, the budget workshop, discuss the budget for fiscal year 2019-20. I think what we need to talk about tonight is the utility rates. They've been working on them, breaking them down. You'll find a couple of information sheets. We discussed the increase. It's broken down here by 5%, 7.5%, 10%, and 12.5%. And then we have another sheet that is breaking it down. Where is it? It is breaking down the increases plus the possibility of franchise fees. But if you will see in your packet, if you see in your packet an example of a sewer bill for the city of Ingram, they have fees tacked on to their, do you have yours?
No.
Okay, what they have added on is an administrative fee for $3.32, and that covers postage and time and envelopes and all that kind of stuff. A maintenance fee of $5, and that's the maintenance fee we had talked about for streets and roads. They have a capital improvement fee of $3, which would go into a designated fund for street construction and improvements, not the maintenance of. And then we have the debt service of $5, and we all know that we're paying debt service out of tax at this point. So, but this franchise fee, it doesn't have to specifically be just a franchise fee. We can designate how much, say, $1 to maintenance and $1 to administration. We could go any amount you want to go. So then, what the treasurer's provided us is a breakdown of the incremental increase. And if you look at, no, not the, okay, so if it went up $1 for maintenance, it would produce $20,160 in income. If we added $1 for maintenance and $1 for capital improvements, numbers are wrong. Oh, it would add $40,320. It's a difference of $20,160 just by adding $1. So it's $20,000 per $1 increment. So council, you'll need to think about this. Jay, do you have any recommendations?
Not as far as dollar wise, I mean, until we get a little closer to the end and decide exactly what we want to look for as rates. And then if we want to use a franchise fee to offset some of that, or do we want to use a franchise fee to dedicate toward streets, drainage, or something like that, just totally for those.
Okay.
Can we talk separately though about what's required for the Texas Water Development Loan? Compared, talk about that on one
Okay,
hand.
we have
and
no
talk-
principal this year to meet. We have no principal to meet. The tax that we've proposed covers the interest,
Okay.
okay? We owe no principal on that loan this year.
So we're pushing that part off
Well,
till
we still owe
next year.
$170,000 on the 2006 bond. So next year, we will owe, our principal payment is $80,000, and our interest is again around $60,000. So that's what we'll be obligated to next year. Yes, Tom?
I'd like to think about what specifically are we trying to accomplish when we set the rates. We talk about traditionally 5% for maintenance, and then there's that. And then over and above that, why are we increasing substantially? We talked about, well, we need to lay the groundwork for what's coming down the road, which I totally understand, but let's think about that logically. How much do we want to raise in the next 5 or 6 or 7 years? How much do we need to raise per year? And then is there a way to accomplish that just through a rate increase that's set aside for that? And then that would give us an answer of how much we want to raise the rates.
Historically, we've gone up 5% every year, and it's not covering the operating cost of the utility system. So we're kind of spinning our wheels and stepping backwards. You know, we've obligated ourselves to get the water side, the drinking water side, and we haven't worked yet on the clean water side, which is the sewer side. But again, it's what do y'all wanna do? I mean, we've got to move forward, but we need to earmark some of this money for a specific purpose. For instance, we talked to the engineer, or to Derek Nizer, and streets come under the general fund side. So we could designate, for instance, $1 or 50 cents to go to street capital improvements. He said he could do a visual survey, give us a educated guess, so to speak, for about $10,000 or $15,000 as to what it's going to require, where the biggest problems are, how long it's gonna take and how expensive it's gonna be, working on drainage and all the other things that are affected by streets. But we just don't have that money anymore. If we designated some money for that particular streets capital improvement project, we could at least start looking at it. You know, I don't know what to do, guys. We just have so many things we need to do, and I don't know what to do about it. Yes, Rebecca?
Well, I thought one of our objectives was to start a capital improvement fund for our wastewater. And that was one of the main focuses of adding a fee or designating a percentage of the rate increase.
Do you know that we did the math, I did the math. Let's say you put a $5 fee on for the water system. A $5 fee would generate 100,000 a year. And in 1,000 years, I don't know what you wanna do.
I think the point is to start now, and we have our administrators and our city secretaries and going out and finding other funds, but in the process of applying for those grants and those funds, we're showing that we are aggressively planning and aware of our need.
Well, I agree with you there, but I would also like to see y'all put something toward doing something about our streets. Perhaps if you would offer, consider 2 different fees. One for capital improvement sewer, one for capital improvement streets. I think that needs to be addressed too. Yes.
For those that are new here and for the record, can you give us an idea of what that wastewater system is gonna cost us? You mentioned in the past.
7 to 10 million.
7 to 10 million for reference.
A lot of it depends on land acquisition, how far we're gonna have to send all of the pipes and everything to get everything. Yeah, I mean, it's just 7 to 10. Yes, Art?
I want to start by saying I appreciate all the hard work that you have to put into this. Now, I understand that you have to raise money, that we have to improve things, and everything costs money, and it's in the millions. But I have to advocate for our senior citizens. If you start adding another $10 fee, you have over 50% of your residents in this city are senior citizens. They are living on fixed incomes. Some of them make $421 a month Social Security. $10 means the world to them. I don't know if there's a way to balance that, because you have an elderly lady living here who puts 1 bag of garbage in her garbage every month and uses a little bit of water and sewer, but she's paying the same as the next door neighbor who has 6 kids and is filling the garbage up with diapers and flushing crap down the toilet all day long. and she's paying that same, and she's making $421 a month. There has to be a balance not to burden our senior citizens any more than they already are.
One thing we're considering is another level of water use under 1,000 or under. And there is no requirement, despite what a former city administrator said, that a person have commercial garbage pickup at their home. If you've got 2 bags of garbage and you wanna take it to your sister's house or take it to wherever you wanna take it, there is no requirement for you to have a tote.
That's awesome. Could you let people know
So I
that?
want everybody to know that. So everybody wants to get up, give it up. And I agree, I mean, I don't have a tote here in the house, here in the city. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, Greg, weren't you speaking?
Well, I had my hand up a minute ago. So at one of the workshops that we did on this, and I think you were out of town, Jay had talked about how it would be discriminatory to offer anyone of a certain age group a specific discount. So it's not fair practice. But one of the suggestions that I did make was what Suzanne said, adding a lower level tier. And that doesn't just benefit a senior citizen, that benefits anyone who uses less water, period. And then finding other options, whether it be electing to have no trash service or possibly working with Republic on a smaller tote or less frequency to offer a lower option is a potential for the future. But certainly you can disconnect your garbage service, and I mean, I know I'd be willing to pick up a neighbor's garbage and bring it to a dumpster. So, you know, just being responsible neighbors.
Yeah.
The only question I have about them not being, in our garbage collection is, will it affect the rest of the people's rates? That not everybody is included in the garbage
It's
pickup.
gonna depend on the number that say elect not to.
If that
You know,
affects the other
Republic is gonna
rates.
present us with a rate every year, and they're probably gonna go up every year a little bit. Now, we have to pass that on to the consumer, of course. But it's all gonna depend on the number of people that opt out, for example, and it's what we're gonna have to look at as far as changing rates in the future.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if there's some kind of fund that can be established for assistance for those hardship cases that are referring to.
Through government funds for the city?
Through the city.
I don't have any idea. Jay?
I'm not aware of any. I mean, I don't know. I'm not aware of any. I've never heard of any like that.
Can you do it if you want to?
Well, how do they fund it?
Well, you're talking about, charging less per tier, be some kind of fund, for assistance.
It
You
is
set a certain amount
utility
aside,
fund.
25 cents, whatever you would need to set aside for that.
I wouldn't be able to answer the question yes or no with any certainty, but I would think that you can't collect a fund from people to use for specific other people. Just my common sense would tell me that. I would think through maybe a local organization or neighbors helping their own neighbors, or the Silver Sage or what have you. You might be able to organize something like that independently.
Yeah, there's a lot of churches that will help people pay their garbage bill or their utility bill.
When it comes to the question of franchise fees, that kind of ties in with what Art was saying. If we talk about something substantial, like a $20 a month, the people at the lowest end, that's gonna be like a 30% increase, whereas people at the upper end, it might be a 10%. So it skews very negatively toward the lower income people and lower utility bills. I'd support $1 or $2, like you were saying, for maybe designated for street, but I think the substance of any increase should be percentages rather than franchise fee.
Rather than a flat rate?
No, franchise fee, you said.
On the
A
franchise fee,
franchise
I'd
fee.
rather have a percentage than a flat rate.
I'd rather have a 10%, 15%, whatever, than a $20 franchise fee. Because a $20 franchise fee would be a 30% increase for some people, and a 10%.
Well, there's no way we're going $20.
Well,
I think you're just giving you an example.
Well,
Yes, ma'am.
So, can you talk to us a little bit about the difference between the rate increase and the specific fees, and call it administration fee, maintenance fee, capital improvement, franchise fee, whatever you wanna call it, what's it gonna be used for, and what is the difference between it specifically and a rate increase?
Well, a rate increase is basically for your operations and maintenance. Now, you can designate money out of a rate increase, just like you can a franchise fee, administrative fee, however you wanna word it, to go to a certain, like streets, for example, or wastewater plant. And what Tom was saying is very true. If you put a $20 franchise fee, if you do it percentage-wise, of course, it's gonna be more for, little low-income people. The idea though of the franchise fee is it can be designated directly to, whether it be streets, drainage, like I say, wastewater plant, water improvements, things like that. And that's, I think, some of the citizens' big question, they're afraid if this money, if we implement a $10 franchise fee, how do they know it's gonna be used for a certain item or a certain project or something like that? And franchise fee is just an easy way of saying, designating it to an account or something to that nature.
May I ask another question?
Yes, of course.
So, on the same note, if I understood you correctly, let's say you have a rate increase of 5%, and then council designates half of that increase for streets and the other half of that increase for capital improvement. Is that an option?
It is,
But it's not as set in stone or as trackable, maybe?
well, it's easier to track a straight
flat
number,
fee.
yes, than it is a percentage, because your water bill may be $20 one month and $100 the next month, so,
It's a lot of calculating.
yeah, it is.
Could I don't know if y'all have seen this. This is something that Laura did for me. And it's basically the same breakdown that, I'm sorry, I'm just having a day.
Amber.
That Amber did, yes, Amber. Amber did, but she put it in a little bit different sort of.
It gives you the individual bill rate.
Hmm?
It gives you the individual bill rate.
Yeah, you got it in your packet. So if you look at this, on the residential side, your total sewer right now and water base rate as it is right now is $37.90. If you put a 5% increase on it, it would increase that total base rate by $1.89. So if you want to equate that to what you're talking about for the franchise, whatever fees you want to call it, then a 5% increase to be dedicated to 2.5% to streets and 2.5% to the sewer plant would generate $1.89 to be split in two parts. Yes.
If we did that, excuse me, and the increase was split between the two, is the base gonna be enough to keep up with what we're doing now?
Well, that's
Because
the
that was a
problem.
right?
It won't.
Yeah.
Yes, Rebecca.
Sorry, what was I?
Anybody else?
Come back to it.
While she's thinking. But Tom, did you get that in your packet? Did you see
Yeah.
this? Go ahead, Rebecca.
A rate increase is going to potentially help cover the cost of current operations, but we've established the problem that our roads, our road fund, our general fund is suffering because the utility is not putting the money back in to cover those costs. So when you have to tear up a street to replace a water line or what have you, the utility is not reimbursing the general fund.
Right.
So the general fund is suffering. So those problems are existing. And then we also need the capital improvement fund. And those are the objectives of the rate study, which reflected a need for a 26% increase in our water bill. So we're really not touching it with these smaller increments of an increase. And the way I see it is that we need a bit of a larger increase, and we need a capital improvement straight fee.
Yes, Bryce?
So I believe you maybe mentioned what we talked about last time, a hybrid of both, where we have flat rate, so franchise fee smaller than maybe this, but then also the increase on
Capital
the percentage.
improvement. Earmark, capital
Earmark.
improvement for
Yep.
the wastewater.
Which is when the whole bond issue came up.
Okay,
That's
now,
me.
we're gonna need to run some numbers, see how it's gonna play into the budget, because this budget is based on a fairy tale number that just dreamed up, just put something in there. So I'm gonna throw something out here, on the utility side, if we did a 10% increase for maintenance and operation, that'd generate $303.78 more per average base rate bill, the resident, okay? Then if we put 5% or $1 for road maintenance or road capital improvement, and $1 for the sewer plant, it would basically be another 5%, so that would be a 15% increase overall. And the rate study suggested a 1% increase on the water side and a 26% increase on the wastewater side, which gave us a general increase of, you know, 24%, which we can't do. Yes, Renee?
So if we increase it to 15%, if we go with the 15%, do we still need to add that dollar for road maintenance and dollar? So
No, that's what I'm
if we
saying.
increase it to 15%, that will include the fee as well.
But we're gonna have to
The
designate
franchise
it.
fee. Right, right. So we can raise it to 15% and designate $1 for a road maintenance or $1 for capital improvement or something like that, and still be okay in our utility department.
Well, we won't be okay unless we
We
make a huge
just
jump, but we're gonna have to make
talked
this jump
about
time and again.
The difficulty in accounting for designating based on the utility
Okay, so
rate
you would have to
percentage
just make
increase.
it
A
a
flat
franchise
fee.
fee.
And I disagree, I think we need the fee to be designated for capital improvement and let the percentage increase cover the costs, the operation
Okay,
and maintenance,
I think you misunderstood what I was trying to say.
maybe. I think I was confused when we started.
Okay, if we put a 15% increase on, and I'm using that 15%, well, actually what it would break down to, 15% would generate $5.68 a bill. But if we designated $1 of that for capital improvement, and I would rather have $1 of it for streets, specifically for streets, because that's our weak area. Then not a big capital improvement street project like I would like to see, but just the maintenance of the streets. Not the maintenance of the plant and the operation of the plant, or the general fund. That's what I would like to see, but, to accomplish that, you could raise 10%, no, yeah, you could raise 10% on your utility rate, and then add a $1 capital fund, or one capital improvement, and $1 street, and still have that $5.68 increase on the average bill. I'm basically looking at these numbers. If you look at this 5%, it's $1.89. So if we add $1 and $1, that's a little over $1.89, but that's 5%, so however you want to equate it. But then 10% for the rate increase would raise the whole bill, the whole base bill, $3.78.
We don't have to increase the residential and commercial at the same rate either.
No, we don't.
Mayor?
Yes, Tom.
What if we raised across the board 7.5% to 10% to cover operation costs? And we had a $5 franchise fee strictly for future capital improvements, which would raise $100,000 a year. And so in 5 years, they'd have $500,000 in the bank to show that we're thinking about this. And so the total increase then per bill would be in the neighborhood of $6, $7, $8, somewhere in there. And then we would have the math simplified. The $5 goes strictly to future improvement. And we have that 7.5% cushion to cover operation costs. And then that goes down in the column.
Well, we have 700 or so residential accounts and 260 commercial accounts. Do y'all want to do this, go straight across the board on residential and commercial? No,
And Tom,
that's all inside the city.
I would just disagree that it was a franchise fee, because franchise fee is meant to reimburse the general fund for maintenance and operation of the streets, and a capital improvement fund would earmark it for wastewater. So calling it a franchise fee means it's gonna be allowed to be paid back to the general fund. Did I misunderstand that?
Well, I mean, it can be designated to whatever you'd like for it to be designated to.
But if it's called a franchise fee,
Mhm.
is that
Well,
not
you could call it
meant-
a street fee, or you could call it.
What I want is for it to be earmarked for capital improvement for wastewater, and
Yeah,
not
you
used
can-
in the general fund.
Absolutely, you can do that, and it would be just designated capital improvement wastewater, for example. That
Oh.
money goes directly to that account, can only be used for that.
Right. My only
And the
And the
point was
public would
not
see
to
that.
call it a
Yeah, no,
franchise
the language
fee.
is fine, but whatever, the flat $5 per
Right.
account. And by calling it a capital improvement fund,
Right.
then people see on their bill exactly where the money's going.
Ma'am?
But could you, if you do it in capital improvement fund wastewater, could you still use that money for streets?
No, ma'am.
No, that's the point.
Well, I know that's the point, but we also wanted to try to generate some money for streets.
That's where the
Well,
rate
that's why we
The rate
increase.
increase will generate the money for streets.
No,
If we do a 10% increase, it'll generate
It's the
money
other
for
way around.
streets.
Not necessarily, you're gonna have to
Designated.
designate a certain amount or percentage.
Of the
to
rate.
Of
what
the
that-
10%
yes,
rate, if we go with the 10% rate.
Yes, Rebecca.
Let me ask, if I may, how would that be designated? Would the city, would we do that just in the budget to pay a total amount out of utility to the general fund?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, that's the way it's usually done. I mean, there's different ways to do it, but we could do it monthly, yearly, you know, whatever council sees appropriate, but usually you'll earmark, say, 1%, when you get to that number, September 1st, boom, it goes into that, or October 1st, however council sees that they'd like to do it.
Okay, Jay, Amber, let's put together some real-life scenarios here and mix and match. And get some of the stuff out to council and see, prior to our next budget workshop, and see. I think I understand what council's trying to say, that they want to definitely set aside money specifically for capital improvements and specifically for the streets or sewer plant or whatever, but not call it franchise fee as much as call it, bind it down, hold it down and make it happen. Yes, Jeff?
And another thing, for streets, for example, we could implement a street cut fee. So if a contractor comes in, cuts a street for whatever reason, gas, electric, whatever, they can be charged a fee for cutting that street.
You mean we don't? So that's just a fee schedule thing, that has nothing to do
Right.
with our
Yeah.
rates here, right?
But you could designate that money also to go toward a street, for example, if you like to.
Great idea.
But that would have to be some sort of,
In the fee schedule.
yeah, but besides doing the fee schedule, to get us any progress any further down on the street project, by the time we charged them a fee and then we did it ourselves or we hired somebody to come do it, I mean, we have very little left to actually go into this fund.
That, and also we can put into an ordinance, if we'd like to, that Suzanne's Gas Company cuts across the street to put in a gas line. You would be responsible for repairing that, plus a fee of whatever it could be to cut the street.
But you know,
Now,
every
it's not a
time-
huge number because we don't have a lot of construction like that here in town.
You know, guys, every time we cut the roads, I'm sure y'all have driven around and you've seen them, we just weaken the whole street if it's not put back together properly. And it was several years ago when we had a big sewer line project that all these cuts were made in the street when our mayor decided it would be more cost efficient for Public Works to do it than for a commercial company to do it. And so it was all just kind of done and not done properly, so. Again, we're suffering the consequences of that. Yes, Glenn?
Yeah, I remember back when we had this discussion before, and I think we should have something in place that requires compaction tests when these streets are repaired, because we have brand new, or some of our newer streets, you know, have the same problem, you know.
Okay, so we're gonna play well. Please feel free to contact Jay this week, Amber this week. Give them your suggestions. We can run up different scenarios. Yes, Glenn?
I have one more thing I'd like to talk to the council about and get them to consider. We were all given this across the board proposed rate. I'm going to refer to what I call the yellow money here. That's the, I don't know how many of you recall 2 years ago during this budget time, we addressed the problem that we have having low salaries for like the city administrator, the secretary, different positions, treasurer, and we gave substantial bumps to those positions to acquire the qualified people that we have now. And you know, it's money well spent, but at the same time, we told the Department of Public Works crew, sorry guys, there's just not enough to go around, you know. Y'all just be patient, your turn's coming. Well, I think it's time for their turn. We're asking these guys, I mean, every time we have a meeting, we talk about the infrastructure. These guys are holding this thing together. You know, we talk about the TCEQ fines and stuff we get. These guys are working their tails off. We have a crew down there now. You don't see two guys working, I mean, one guy working, two guys standing around on their phones anymore. You don't see the attitude down there that we used to have. And I think it's time that we consider giving them a substantial bump in their salaries, because they are the ones that we're asking them to get their certification and stuff. Let's make it worth their while. What makes them want to stick with us if, you know, we put them on the bottom of the barrel, you know, they have the lowest wage rate, they get the smallest percentage of these across the board rates. So what's their incentive to stay around? In the paper this week, in the bulletin, there's advertising for the Flying L PUD for somebody with some water and wastewater certs. Well, you know what? How do we hold on to these people?
May I show you on page 36, the total utility fund revenue is $1,762,000. The total as proposed budget, now that's your proposed budget, page 36. Now this is also based on the water rate increases and the additional fees that we're proposing to put on the bill. If you look at this the way it is right here, on page 36, then you look at page 47, you'll see with this budget, with only the cost of living rates in it, we still have $236,914 that we could use for salaries for Public Works. But again, that's based on the fees. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add, I think that the Public Works Department does need a substantial raise. I think everybody, our team that we have, our full staff that we have right now is doing an excellent job getting everything done that needs to be done. But part of the incentives that we have, Glenn, are they pay 100% health insurance. We pay 100% vision and dental. We pay 100% life insurance. So we do have a lot of benefits to work for the city as well. So it's not like they're, not getting the same benefits that everybody else in the city is getting.
What's your point?
That
I mean,
there are benefits there.
I understand, but everybody gets that. All these people that have had these substantial bumps, they get that.
I understand that, but a lot of times people work someplace because they have 100% coverage for their health, vision, dental, life insurance. They have all of that, covered. So a lot of people work just because they have that. I'm not saying that they don't deserve a raise. I'm not saying that at all. But there are incentives. The city is a good place to work now that we have everything in place.
I sent you all a letter. And the people we train and pay to send to these schools and things, you want to keep them. You don't want them going out to flying L because we trained them, okay? I mean, I understand this is hard work these guys are out here doing. The two that came to turn, if they hadn't rescued me over the holidays, I don't know what I would have done because of that water leak. This lady sitting right here is the best you have ever had, and I've been here a long time. You might want to think about that for a raise for her.
We also have, and yes, I want the raises, I am all about that, but we also have the certification pay that every license they get more money on their check. I think the D is 500, the C is 1,000. Okay, so.
One-time stipend, yeah.
No, it's every month on their check.
Oh, every month.
So if you have a C, then 1,500 a year goes on your check. That's $100 a month.
I wanted to ask Lynn, what do you consider a substantial raise for the public works, like $1 more? What are your thoughts?
The yellow money I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And by the way, to answer Rilla, I also include Laura in this.
Okay.
I've heard nothing but good things about the work she does.
I agree.
But what's wrong with giving all of this money to that department? I mean, we asked them 2 years ago, hey, just be patient, your time's coming. Well, I think their time is coming. I mean, we can sit here and talk about all the benefits we have and everything. Well, cities around us have those same benefits. And if they're paying more, then we're gonna train these people and they're gonna go.
May I clarify and ask a question? Are you suggesting withholding a COLA raise to all other departments so that money can be increased to the Public Works Department?
Exactly.
Yes.
So nobody else gets a cost of living increase?
This year.
I mean, I didn't always get a cost of living when I was working.
When was that?
I'm talking about bumping up these people
And
that
I'm not
are
disagreeing
very.
with that. I just was clarifying.
I'm sorry, I thought I stated plain. But yes, that's what I'm advocating.
Okay.
Glenn, what would you think of 1.5% for everybody and then that pool of the rest of the yellow money going to that?
I'm open to anything the council wants to do. I'm putting this out there because I'm telling y'all what we said 2 years ago, what we did to that department in favor of getting the key people that we need. So at what point in time do we come through on the city's promise to them?
Rebecca, are you ready?
I've withdrawn my question.
So the cost of living raise is at 3%. That's what the cost of living raise is. That's what all of the yellow money is a 3% increase, cost of living raise. So if we decrease that, Tom, to less than that and then give the rest of it to, is that what you're kind of saying, is, and then give the rest
I
of the
just wanted to
public?
hear what Glenn
Yeah.
told that, but that's what I was
So you,
asking.
we would still give the rest of our employees a cost of living raise, just not a 3% cost of living raise. If we could work it to where we gave them a 2% cost of living raise. I know that the going rate right now, it's 3%. That's the cost of living for 2019, 2020. But we could reduce that to 2% and give, you know, all the rest of that money to the Public Works Department, and we could see how that, how much of an increase that gives each one of them, if we want to do that.
Go ahead, Ron.
Okay, again, I'm just throwing this out there for council to consider. It's gonna be up to this council to decide how they wanna do it. They can leave it like this. They can, you know, see it my way or somewhere in between. I mean, I'm just putting it out there for council to think about it. It's just like our our rates and stuff. It's out there for discussion. We need to work through it.
I would like to see the COLA across the board, but then I would like to see, as the word substantial, a substantial raise for public works. You know, $13, $14, that's ridiculous. Of course, the fact that they do get their certification paid, several of them are certified. But, you know,
Keeping up.
we were looking at SAWS, we were trying a couple of years ago to line our pay scale up with SAWS, and I think we did a pretty decent job, but now we're falling behind again by quite a bit. So, and I'm looking at Laura because she spent so many years working for SAWS, she's been helpful, you know. Okay, Bryce?
So we've got a couple different ideas on how we can do this, and you mentioned on page 47 the overtures there. Now that we have this and we can start to digest it, this is just a workshop, we're not making decisions tonight. Can we go back and process all this? Because we're not making that decision tonight, right?
Right, no,
So-
absolutely not. But remember, that's with the highly inflated franchise fee thing,
Okay.
so that will all come off.
Right. Okay.
Yes, Jill? Oh, yes, Kim, Tony.
I just, like to add on to what I was involved in a conversation 2 years ago, what Glenn was talking about. He's absolutely correct. In addition to that, we didn't just hold off on that, but they didn't have a leader. We expected somebody to come in and kind of lead the group and be able to form that and ask for certain salaries that he would like to see put in his position, or the hierarchy in his position. So I don't know if that's been done or not. The other thing is I'm, and y'all know this, I'm firmly against cost of living raises. It does not work in small cities, it does not work in municipalities. Governments go under. We know this. That's why we have deficits in the federal government, because they are guaranteed a certain cost of living raise. In a small office like this, you should have pay scales, and we talked about this in great lengths. For your positions, you should have pay scales, and your pay scales in that position should be changed every year to meet the economy, whatever there would be cost of living up, whatever it is. But if you have a person that sits in the same position and gets a 3% raise, and he works for the city for more than 15 years, he has cost himself out of what he's doing for the city. If you pay a clerk a cost of living raise and they've been here for 20 years, you're paying someone a salary that by giving them that percentage, by not bouncing it against what's happening in the world and doing it a pay scale and what they're actually benefiting the city for, and giving them a reward for what they're doing, promoting them into a position that gives them more responsibility and gives them the opportunity to get more money or take on more. Those are the reward systems that should be in place to encourage people to be customer service oriented and to actually do more for the city than what we're paying for them, or they should act like they want their boss's job so that they want a promotion. And I'm very, I mean, to some most degree, I'm very happy with what we've done so far. But cost of living will never work in our small office. It's not gonna work in the long term. And if you do keep the people that long, then you've done them a disservice, because they're complacent and they're gonna get they're doing all of the citizens a disservice. And thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony.
I wanted to add one more point too. If the Public Works Department wants to hire a specialist, you know, it's gonna cost, I mean, like, they could probably use someone with extensive electrical background, you know. I think that's one of our shortfalls in this. And it's gonna take money to do that, and it needs to be better than just what our budget or our average around here can, you know, allow. Because we have to compete with the surrounding cities. I mean, we've got Hondo, Kerrville, Bernie, you know, and Helotes right here around us. So we are competing, you know, for the people in the marketplace.
Good question.
Yes,
Do we
Mr. Chair.
have a pension plan for the workers? Like if they, I think that would be a pretty good incentive. If I wanna work 20 years and get a check when I retire, that would be a pretty good incentive to stay with the city, not go out and find out.
Well, just historically, I have to agree with what Tony said to a certain extent, because the employees that we have lost over the years are making these tremendous salaries that are way over what the newer employees that we're bringing in that are just as qualified or more. And, yeah, historically, I hadn't thought of it quite like that, but I got to thinking about it, and some of these long-term employees, which just doesn't work. But I would like to see Public Works get a decent step up here. Yes, sir.
I'll tag on. I agree with Tony, and I think that I could see a need for like merit increases. You're in that pay grade, but your raise is gonna be based on merit.
Mhm. And you know, that's kind of what the certification pay is too. You've gone out and you've worked to get this, and,
That's
you know,
one of
so,
the
yeah.
things we do.
You know, that can go
Merit
up to.
increase. And then if you do something outside of there, continuing education, anything that might be related to your job, those are the ways you get your merit increase,
And
above and beyond.
if I remember correctly, we're budgeting for this cost of living increase so that the funds are there, but employees do get their raises from their bosses, from their supervisor, through their, evaluation.
They do to a point. When you're hired at a certain number, let's just use $10 for example. Then after your probation period, everything okay, no issues, no problems, you go in the right direction, you do get a raise.
So,
Go ahead.
do we need to not designate it as COLA in order to follow, the evaluation base, raise increases? Or do we wanna do a flat rate increase, but then budget for merit pay?
What you see on this spreadsheet is a no frills, what we got is what we got, is a 3.5% raise.
But
That does not have
again,
any room for increases. We're gonna have to, we used a contingency for that in the past. So, but this is with no room for anything but the 3%
but
raise.
again, we're just budgeting for it, it's not automatically given, or is it because it's a COLA, it's automatically given?
COLA is automatically given.
Okay, so
A
we can
merit raise
change
is not.
the name of it,
Yes.
potentially. So we can budget for it and then award it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, Tony?
And just one other point, it's something that I struggled with on council that I really never understood, and when I was on council, you know, we didn't have a city staff, and so we were the ones that were trying to administer and hire and do all of the things, you know, that the management was supposed to do. But what I saw when we were doing that was, and I'm gonna touch on this again, the pay scale, there was no employee hierarchy, there was no, I still don't know, what is the approved amount of full-time employees that we have in the office? I mean, what is your hierarchical structure? I mean, if Jay's supposed to be running a city, does he know exactly how many people and FTEs that he should do? And is it accurate? We talked about restructuring that for a great deal of time. And if that's the case, you may want to reevaluate, number one, how many employees you have, exactly what departments they are, and pay scales for each, so that your management can do their job. Because if you, as a council, set a pay increase, then each year you should be looking at the pay scales for each of those positions and either increasing them by a certain percentage or trying to meet the market. Maybe we're struggling with keeping a person in a certain position and it's because the market is more, pays more or something. That's what you should be looking at each year in a budget, in my opinion, is that each individual employee in your employee model should be scaled according to cost of living and demand. I mean, I'm sure there was like a buggy whip person that really needed to be here in 1800 and they were paid accordingly. Well, that job is no longer required. And is it something that you need more skills for, and do you need to increase that pay in order to solicit and to market for someone that you really need for that position? And do they need to take, does one person need to take over 2 positions? I don't know the answers to that, but those are things that we talked about when it talked about approving number of employees, employee model, and pay scale for those, and then your management is the ones that need to give the merit increases as long as they stay within that. And you have an overall possible budget versus, so that you have they have a lot more control that way, and you understand what you're truly approving as opposed to anything else. And we never got that far. I mean, I know there was a lot to do, but I just wanted to bring that up because we all had very strong discussions about that particular thought process. So, thank you.
Is it appropriate to make a motion to adjourn?
Not as far as I'm concerned.
No, it's their motion.
They'll tell you if they have objection. Glenn, would you take that, please?
Move to adjourn.
Any discussion? All in favor? All in favor, 6:57, this meeting is adjourned.